Hey guys, hoping all is well with everyone. So in this video we're going to be continuing our read-along of The Secret Zoo, The Final Fight. So in this video we're going to be continuing with chapter 20, and just as a quick reminder, these next several chapters are going to have the titles of chapters be times, and that is because as we get closer and closer to midnight in the story, that's going to be when DeGraff launches his plan of attack of taking over Noah's world, starting at midnight. So these chapters that kind of go forward into the suspense building of that are going to be entitled by times. Chapter 20, 11:39. The crossers gathered just beyond the portal and watched Mr. Darby walk deeper into the secret zoo. Dark storm clouds loomed overhead, leaving everything in silhouette and shadow. The monstrous animals were flooding into the sectors, and all the tall trees shook as thousands of sick birds jumped from branch to branch. The once colorful leaves were now wilted and weak. It chilled Noah to think that the city of species might soon be as desolate and dead as the Darklands, the sector that the Sasquatches had once occupied. He could feel DeGraff's magic in the air. He could feel it in his heart and mind, an actual weight that would eventually crush the goodness in Noah, given enough time. "We need to guard this portal," Tank said, gesturing to the one that opened to Noah's kitchen. He motioned to the descenders and said, "Make sure nothing gets through." A group of descenders spread out along the wide curtain, their animal powers ready to strike. Blizzard moved into position as well. "Zach, you ready?" Noah realized Tank was talking into his radio. "Now?" Noah was able to hear Zach in his headset, his voice, and his surprise. "No, I need at least 10 minutes. "You got 5, Tank said. "Look out the window." The airwaves went silent. Then Zach said, "What's Darby doing?" "He's going after DeGraff. This is happening now." A few seconds passed without a response. Then Zach said, "Okay, 5 minutes. I'll send Sam to your window," Tank said. "It's the quickest way." "Roger," Zach said. And then the airwaves stayed silent. Tank turned to Jordynn, the only Spectre still with the group and the scouts. "Get into camo, and somebody ghost me." As the scouts opened their pockets and allowed chameleons to crawl out onto them, Jordynn walked over to Tank and shared some of her chameleons with him. Their bodies started to blur, and then seemed to disappear altogether. On Noah's shoulder, Marlowe also blended into the surroundings. "Head for the coffee shop," Tank said. Latte was about 100 yards away. As Noah headed in that direction, he kept his attention on Mr. Darby. The old man raised his arms and shouted, "I'm here, old friend." Friend. Never had that term been more untrue. DeGraff and Mr. Darby wanted each other dead. They'd wanted it for more than a lifetime. A long fountain in the middle of the street had a waist-high wall. Mr. Darby climbed onto it and began to walk along the ledge, his arms out to his sides and his voice louder than ever. "I'm here, DeGraff. Why do you hide?" The animals plowing into the sectors continued to ignore him. Noah suddenly remembered his parents and said, "Megan, did you see where they took Mom and Dad?" "No. All the noise and animals, and it was so dark." Mr. Darby continued to call out his rival's name. He turned a slow circle on the ledge of the fountain and hollered, "Let's end this." Just then, a figure jumped up from the water and grabbed Mr. Darby's legs. DeGraff. He pulled the old man into the fountain, splashing water everywhere. Then he pounced on his victim, and both men disappeared behind the short wall. "Mr. Darby!" Ella screamed. "Quiet," Tank said. "This is what he wants." "To die?" Ella asked. Tank shook his head. "To battle." Mr. Darby appeared in his waist-high water above 50 feet away from DeGraff. Noah had no idea how he'd managed to slip away from the shadowist. DeGraff looked down at himself and peeled a wet leaf off his jacket. Then he straightened his fedora and smiled. the old wounds on his face spreading in a grotesque way. "Clever," he said. "You can't do this," Mr. Darby said. DeGraff laughed, and it was a sickening sound, noise bubbling up from his chest. "Stand proud, old man. Let's not end this in cliches." "You mistake me," Mr. Darby said. "I mean, you can't do this. I won't let you." DeGraff laughed harder this time. "Look around, fool. You've already lost." "Have I?" Mr. Darby said. He raised his arms out to his sides again and added, "I'm still standing." "Yes," DeGraff said, "but not for long." The shadowist disappeared, leaving ripples in the water where he'd stood. He immediately jumped up behind Mr. Darby, but as he attacked, Mr. Darby leaned over, and Noah witnessed a new impossible. Mr. Darby's jacket changed form. It rounded outward, and the fabric became hard and smooth, a shiny surface with a pattern of connected shapes. A shell. DeGraff tried to grab onto the surface, but couldn't, and Mr. Darby swung around, easily slipping out of his grasp. Then he stood up straight, and the shell changed back into his normal jacket. Out of the corner of his eye, Noah noticed movement back at the portal to his kitchen. Sam and the other descenders were kneeling in the street, bowing their heads like knights before a king, just as they had outside creepy critters after DeGraff had escaped. "Tank," Noah said. What are they doing?" "Reverence," Tank explained. "Reverence for the first descender." "What?" Tank simply gave him time for his words to sink in. Noah turned his attention back to the bottle and the fountain. DeGraff struggled to find his balance. Then he reached into his jacket and withdrew a long knife. "Looks like you want to make this interesting." The shadowist charged, his arm pulled back and his knife readied. But as he delivered what should have been a deadly blow, Mr. Darby fell to his knees, and his open jacket draped over his sides. 12-inch barbs sprang out from his velvet, just like they did on Solana's clothes, and DeGraff fell on top of him. The shadowist cried out in pain and rolled off into the water. When he stood again, Noah saw barbs sticking out from his thighs. DeGraff ripped them from his flesh. Or what remained of his flesh, anyway. As incredible as it seemed, Mr. Darby had more than one animal power. DeGraff attacked again, and Mr. Darby sprang high into the air, like Hannah, and landed behind his assailant. A voice rose over the airways. "Ready when you are." Zach. He had the primary portal configured. "Got it," Tank said. "Don't forget to hand off the mod that activates the portal." Noah looked back at Sam, who'd gotten the message as well. Sam raised his arms over his head and brought them back down, striking the zippers on his wrists against the buckles of his hips. Then he lifted his arms again, releasing his feathery wings. He squatted and jumped into the sky. Noah watched him soar, veering around trees and the glass tubes of the water slide as he made his way to Technical Tower. As Tank and the scouts closed to within 50 yards of the coffee shop, Mr. Darby turned and his jacket became the shell again. This time, he kicked out with his powerful legs and plowed into DeGraff. As the two slid across the fountain, spilling water over the sides, DeGraff escaped onto the shadows and appeared in the new spot, water dripping off the brim of his fedora. Noah turned to look toward Technical Tower, just as Sam was attacked by a group of orangutans in the nearby tree. One of Sam's wings bent, and the descender began to spiral toward the ground. He hit the street and rolled, his grunts booming across the airways. "Sam!" Tank said. "Sam! You okay?" Silence over the airways. On the streets beneath the orangutans, the fallen descender didn't move. "Sam!" More silence, and then finally, Sam's voice, wounded and weak. I'm all right." Sam staggered to his feet and glanced around. "The primary portal. I dropped it." "It's in the tree," Ella said. Noah saw the curtain hanging over a branch high above Sam. More than a dozen orangutans were swinging across the tree to get it. Sam tried to fly and couldn't. "Podgy!" Noah cried out. Back at the portal to Noah's kitchen, Podgy took several strides and then leaped into the air. Noah opened his right pocket to come out of his camouflage, hoping DeGraff wouldn't notice. On his shoulder, Marlowe appeared as well. Podgy spotted Noah and flew his way. Seconds later, he touched down near the scout, his webbed feet clapping against the street. Then he turned back to Noah, turned his back, just like he had in the dark lands and the window box outside Noah's room. "Go," Tank said to Noah. "We can do our part without you." Noah worried about the extra weight of his backpack. He considered taking it off, but decided against it. Then he walked closer to Podgy, saying, "Fly above the curtain. I'll grab it as you pass." Podgy whapped his wing flippers to show that he understood. He started to run, and as Noah charged behind him, Marlowe jumped off his shoulder and flew alongside. When Podgy jumped into the air, Noah wrapped his arms around the penguin's blubbery midsection. The two veered to one side, and Noah felt the curtain certain that they'd crash. But Podgy gained control, and the winged duo soared up and up. It took only a few seconds for Podgy to close in on the primary portal. "Get as close as you can," Noah said. He glanced over and saw Marlowe. The tiny kingfisher was still flying beside them, a blue blur in front of the dark skies. As they closed in on the primary portal, so did the orangutans, leaping from branch to branch. Podgy veered in to avoid them. One orangutan jumped at Noah and just missed grabbing his ankle. Another leaped at Podgy, who dipped out of the way at the last second. As Podgy flew over the curtain, Noah reached out and snatched it. Then Podgy weaved through the limbs and punched out to the other side of the tree. "I got it!" Noah said into his headset. Sam's voice rose over the airwaves. "The mod! You need the mod!" Noah looked down and saw Sam waving the mod above his head. Podgy dipped low to the ground, and as the duo passed over Sam, the descender tossed up the device. Noah reached out with one hand, got his arm wrapped in the curtain, and nearly missed the catch. But his fingers closed on the mod and was able to stuff it into his jacket pocket. "Koala Castle," Noah said. "Podge, get us there." As Podgy swerved down a dark alley, Noah's legs swung out and he nearly slipped off the penguin's back, narrowly avoiding being thrown against the wall. Both sides of the alley reached up and out of sight, brick walls covered in green ivy. Frogs and birds and other small creatures looked out from their leaves, their eyes glowing red. Podgy veered around branches and steel balconies. Then he flew out onto a new street. As he headed for the open front doors to the Forest of Flight, Noah realized that cutting through the sector would provide a shortcut to Koala Castle. Inside the Forest of Flight, birds crowded the heights. They hadn't been affected by DeGraff's dark magic because the building had protected them from the storm. Hundreds of hummingbirds flew around, streaking bright colors across the landscape. When the tiny birds saw Podgy and Marlowe, they chased after them, almost in a playful way, soaring beside waterfalls and wet, rocky cliffs. At the other side of the sector, Podgy flew through an open window and Noah's toes skipped off the frame. As Koala Castle came into view, Podgy veered toward the entrance, a velvet curtain hanging in front of an opening in the wall. Into the headset, Noah said, "We're inbound, closing in on Koala Castle." Tank's voice came through the airwaves. "Remember, you're going into a sector, not an ordinary building. You'll lose communications when you cross." "Roger," Noah said as the Podgy neared the curtain. 20 feet, 15, 10. "Good luck, Tank." "Same to you, kid. Just hang the primary portal and get..." Tank's voice stopped as the curtain swept off Noah's back and he and Podgy entered the sector. The first thing Noah saw was Koala Castle, a sprawling storybook castle built on the rocky top of a mountain. The second thing that they saw was a Sasquatch, an upright creature with bulging muscles and scraggly hair. The beast swung its arm and connected with Podgy. As the emperor penguin was thrown to the side, he tipped, and Noah slipped down his back, his legs banging and dragging across a drawbridge. Then Noah lost his grip and crashed to the wooden planks. Noah lay there, his head spinning. After a few seconds, he staggered to his feet and looked around. He was on a long drawbridge that crossed a ravine that looked like something from the Grand Canyon. Hundreds of feet below, a river raged. The drawbridge was easily half the length of the football field. The thick wooden planks connected an expansive mountain wall to the mountain-top koala castle was built upon. Sasquatches stood on both sides of Noah, 2 in front and 3 in back, their mangy fur dangling from their outstretched arms, their gazes fixed on him. "Podgy!" Noah called out. He looked left, then right, and then spotted Marlowe and Podgy flying circles off to one side of the drawbridge. He realized he'd dropped the primary portal. He saw it lying on the bridge and quickly picked it up. He thought of the mod and checked his jacket pocket. Still there. Then he looked toward Koala Castle and saw the open courtyard he needed to get to. It was about 100 feet past the end of the drawbridge. Noah heard a long, slow growl. A Sasquatch was standing close by, its eyes glowing red and bloody drool dangling from its chapped lips. The beast lunged at Noah, who threw himself to one side at the last second and then took off running. The other Sasquatches attacked, their arms swinging and their razor-sharp claws slicing through the air. Noah ducked and dodged, barely missing the blows. He dove between the legs of a Sasquatch, rolled once on the bridge, and came to his feet running. His heart raced as his heels pounded the boards. He ran 30 feet, 40 feet. Then he abruptly stopped near the middle of the drawbridge as a new pack of Sasquatches stepped off the mountaintop and onto the wooden planks. He glanced back and forth. The Sasquatches had both ends of the drawbridge blocked. They started charging towards him, and Noah could feel their weighty footfalls on the boards beneath his feet. He was trapped. The Sasquatches would reach him in seconds. "Podgy!" Noah called out, his arms waving above his head. Less than 50 feet away, the penguin veered toward Noah. Noah could tell he was planning to sweep low over the drawbridge so Noah could grab on. It wouldn't be easy. Noah had the curtain to consider, and he also had added the weight of the backpack. His thoughts stopped. The backpack. Maybe he could plow through the Sasquatches and get to the mountaintop. He grabbed the drawstrings on his shoulder straps. 2 pulls, and he would be ready to fight. The Sasquatches slowed down and nervously glanced at one another. They'd battled enough descenders to understand what Noah was planning. "Pull the cords," a voice inside Noah said. "Pull the cords and fight." He thought of Sam and Hannah and Solana, the way they handled things, with force. But grabbing onto Podgy seemed the better choice. Surely he could hold on long enough for the penguin to fly him to safety. Podgy was less than 20 feet away and closing fast. To free his hands, Noah draped the curtain across his shoulders. Then he prepared to jump. The Sasquatches charged again, causing the planks to quake. As Podgy flew over the drawbridge, Noah jumped onto the penguin's back. His toes dragged along the boards, and then his feet felt the open air. Podgy was over the river, and so was Noah. He told himself not to look down, but the urge was irresistible. The mountain walls looked like steep cliffs with a few trees growing from flat patches of land. The distant river looked like a trickle of water. As Podgy veered toward the safety of the mountaintop, Noah felt his hold slip. When he tried to grab back on, the wind pulled the primary portal out from under him. Noah instinctively reached for it, came off Podgy's back, and began to free fall into the ravine, his clothes fluttering and snapping, his organs floating in his body. Above him, Podgy, his only hope for rescue, grew smaller and smaller, and quickly became nothing more than a black dot, a distant bird in the sky. Chapter 21, 1143. "How does it look?" Jordynn asked. Silence. Ella looked around and wondered if Jordynn was talking to her. She couldn't tell because she couldn't see her, or Richie, or Megan, or Tank. The 5 of them were still camouflaged. Perfect, said a deep voice. Tank. It's crazy, Richie said, and Ella realized he was standing right beside her. It's like it's not even there. Ella thought the same thing. They could see out all around them into the city of species, where DeGraff and Mr. Darby were still fighting in the streets. Mirage complete, Jordynn said into her headset. Sending signal. Ella looked into the direction she thought Jordynn was and saw something appear. A figurine. A small porcelain clown with an oversized nose. A second later, the clown was gone. Jordynn had dropped the knick-knack from Noah's house, the signal, into a pocket that opened to the old bakery in the streets of Transparency, the place where the specters' chameleons were kept, and the place where Lily was waiting. Ella held her breath, hoping Lily would get the message, and wondering what would happen next. And I'll stop the video there, ending chapter 21. But I hope you guys enjoyed the read today. And as always, we look forward to seeing you next time, where we continue our read aloud of the Secret Zoo, the final fight, as we approach the midnight hours and the final takeover of DeGraff on Noah's world. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please take good care of yourselves and be safe. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.